again, everybody. This is Jonathan Miller. We're back in Cornwall, Pennsylvania, and we are here at the Cornwall United Methodist, also known as Episcopal Church. This church was actually started in 1793. This section here is the original section that was built in I believe it was 1873. I may be wrong about that. If I am, I do apologize. And I'll look that up again, but I believe it's 1873. But it was started in 1793 when I guess some of the Methodist missionaries were coming, excuse me, coming through the area. And this was primarily, a lot of the areas that we do, or what we've done so far, have been primarily were inhabited by German immigrants. This area, because of Peter Grubb, was actually was inhabited by mainly British immigrants. So like those German immigrant areas, they would tend to go towards, say, like Lutheran or Reformed churches, Moravian, because they were speaking German, and it made the most sense. Now where you found like Presbyterian areas or churches, Presbyterian areas, Methodist and Episcopal, those were generally where British immigrants were, because they were looking for churches that spoke primarily English, taught the scriptures in English and their hymns in English. So that other section, that was actually added in 1998. They tried to match up the stone as best they could. Just beautiful Gothic architecture influences. And I think I said in the video that Kate had asked about that little stone building. It's actually a little larger than I thought. I'm thinking it was probably like a summer kitchen, something of that nature, because just the size. It's now a garage, and I believe the house that's next to it would be a parsonage. That would be my guess, that it wouldn't be, because the spring houses are usually much smaller. But yeah, this church is a beautiful architecture. The stone here, you see the limestone, the lighter stone, that actually came from, we just did the Donamore Station, that they apparently had quarries there, and that's where that stone came from. And this particular church, the original church, was a brick structure, and they had that until probably 1872, and then they just outgrew it. And the Coleman family, who had bought the Cornwall Iron Furnace from the Grubb family, they actually commissioned this church. And this church was actually just like, I believe, that St. Luke's Episcopal. It was actually designed, the architect was the man who made or did the design of Philadelphia's City Hall. So they like to use him apparently, and he also designed this church. There are very St. Luke's is much larger than this, but they're very much the same, with having like the red stone, the sandstone accents, and then having the limestone on it. So weirdly, the St. Luke's that we visited, when the bell was ringing, Robert Habersham Coleman, who was the son that took over from the patriarch Robert Coleman, he actually was building a mansion here in Cornwall, and his wife died very young, and he just basically, I guess he was so heartbroken, he just had them tear it down. Actually, the stone that's for St. Luke's Episcopal Church is from that mansion, because nothing of that remains anymore. It's actually, sadly, a lot of the mansions, the Iron Master homes and those types of things are now gone here in Cornwall. Some of them still exist at Cornwall Manor, and maybe we can get access so you can at least see that. They had the Iron Master's mansion. It was a later addition, or it was the guy that was the president of the Iron Furnace. They had that in the stables. They actually made an apartments, into apartments for the residents. But it's just, I really have fallen in love with Cornwall. It's just such a beautiful area. There's this church. The school's magnificent. It's now the elementary school, not the general all-purpose school. They have that Cornwall Inn, and then those 3 stone villages. It's just very unique. A lot of this is red sandstone, a lot of these different homes, a lot of history here. So with that, we're going to check out this cemetery. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to say about the church, but yeah, it's a really quite a cool church, and maybe we'll go down around and just take a quick peek at the parsonage and the garage, but I think that's more like a personal property, so I want to be a little careful with that. But yeah, so a lot of this would be very unique marking there. I'm not quite sure what that is. Almost looks like it could be an anchor or something. Probably isn't, but a lot of stuff probably from, you know, this cemetery would be from the middle 1790s to 1820s. You have a lot of those. You'd have some Revolutionary War vets and stuff like that here, I would assume. But I wouldn't be surprised either if the land here maybe was originally donated by the Grubbs, because at that time they were the prominent family. They owned the Iron Furnace and all that, and then eventually sold it to Robert Coleman, I think in 1798. So it makes sense that a lot of times the really rich families would be the ones that would donate that land for the local churches or a cemetery, for community cemeteries. Just sort of how that operated. But there's a Civil War veteran, so maybe, I think right there might be a Revolutionary War vet. Normally the oldest part of the cemetery is the closest to the church, but sometimes that isn't the way it operated. Looks like a Job Baldwin. It's not a normal name you see as Job. Now there's Archibald Ramsey. We always say this, but it's so true. It's like every single one of these people had a story. It'd be great to just know what those stories were, and it's just unfortunately a lot of that's just lost to history. And probably a lot of this area here that is no stones, there's probably people still buried here. It's just the stones got ruined over time. I mean, you never know, you had vandalism or something like that. It's just sort of, so there's a little bit closer of a look at that. Like I said, it's probably, I would assume, maybe one of those summer kitchens and stuff like that they'd have for the church. That's what I'm assuming. Whether I'm right on that, I don't know. I'd have to look it up a little bit more. Yeah, today was the first day of mowing that we did, and I'm pretty beat. Let's see what this is here. Isaac E. Shea. Dear wife, children, and friends, I thank God for preserving my life and wish I were home again. I wonder if this is a Civil War vet. Isaac E. Shea enrolled in the PA Volunteers on April 20th, and he was at 35 years of age and served with Company G, 5th Infantry Regiment during the Civil War. On July 24th, 1861, he returned to civilian life as a shoemaker. On February 27th, 1862, he again answered the call to arms and served with Company C, 93rd Infantry Regiment, PA Volunteers. He died August 16th, 1862. So I wonder if he got killed in battle, or I don't know, something else happened. Here's a guy, this guy is War of 1812. Thomas G. Shea. Probably was his, might even been his father. It's always sad, you know, parents have to bury their children. There's the one line in Lord of the Rings, Theoden says after he finds out that his son Theodred had died. He's like, no parent should have to bury their child, and that's so very, very true. It's just sad when that happens. A parent would give anything for their child, and they want the very best for their child. They want them to have a long life, a successful life. It's spelled a little differently, but here's another of those John Millers that preceded me. Birthday's actually reasonably close to mine as well. Now, you know, obviously a little bit older than my birthday, being that he was born in 1796 and I was born in 1979, but and his wife, Ann Ramsey. There's a William Miller. Thomas Miller. A whole bunch of Millers there. Excuse me. There's a lot of empty sections here. I mean, this is a relatively old cemetery, so unfortunately a lot of stones just didn't survive. I always like when they have any kind of ornate markings like they have on the top of those stones. It's like the craftsmanship and the skill that went into doing that. We'll look back at the church because there you can see the bell tower a little bit better. It's just beautiful. Beautiful area for homes. There's a Margaret, wife of Conrad Miller. I think I talked about it, and either it was one of the last two of the country roads take me home. They do have another cemetery that's on the be the eastern side of Cornwall that probably over time it's a shared cemetery for the different churches. Like I said, they don't have, from what I've seen, there isn't. I think there's a Reformed church and there is an Evangelical Congregational Church in Rexmont. And the Evangelical Congregational Church was one of those churches that was an offshoot of the church that John Walter and Jacob Albright started, the Evangelical Association. Now that was German based, and there you can see a little bit of the parsonage over there, which I'm assuming is the parsonage. Might be church offices now, I don't know, but it's just the same type of stonework and all that, and I haven't been able to find anything on that, but that's what I would assume that it is. Yeah. You wonder how many of these folks were miners, and that type of stuff. We're going to go down to that stone at the end, check that out, see what that has to say. It looks like a unique stone monument. And then we'll wind out. Hey, there's an unknown grave. They had a lot of times that you had like the unknown graves, or the ones that were marked with field stones from at this time period, were either unfortunately slaves or like Indians. That was quite common for that time period. They'd have a part of the cemetery, they'd have unknown grave or whatever it might be, and that's just sort of how they did things back then. And unfortunately, in these areas, there were a number of plantations that did have slaves born of African descent. And I know in Myerstown, which isn't that far away from here, oh, this is interesting. So here they have PA Volunteers 93rd Infantry, in memory of the 7 Shea brothers who enrolled in 1861, serving in the 93rd PA Volunteers during the Civil War. The Isaac Shea Shoemaker, or I guess it has what their career was. And so he was a shoemaker. It was 1862. That's the one that we looked at that sounds like he died in the Civil War. William Shea, he was a furnacer, so he was one of the guys that was working on the Iron Furnace. He died in 1899. Cyrus Shea, I'm sure he's still not with us. They don't have a death date there. He's a miner. Simon Shea, he's a painter, 1900. Daniel Shea was a laborer. He died in 1863, so I wonder, and Jacob Shea, 1863, he was a farmer. I wonder if they also died in the Civil War. That's sad. John Shea, he was a miner. They were the sons of Captain John Shea, who served in the Revolutionary War and lived in a log house near the site of the old mining office in Miners Village, Pennsylvania. Wow. Let's see if there's anything around the back. That's pretty neat. It's another one of those really quite cool stories. And there you can get a view of the church from further away. The parsonage, I'm assuming, in the it's a garage now, but I'm assuming it's probably like a summer kitchen type of thing. Yeah, so cool. With that, I will say thank you as always for coming along. We talk about a little bit of history of this church, the Cornwall United Methodist Church. Also, sometimes they'll have Episcopal in there as well, but just one of the many beautiful buildings that's here in Cornwall, Pennsylvania. It's definitely a cool place to just drive through and check out the old villages, which I may wind out doing one where I actually get out of the vehicle and then stop in front of each of these individual villages. Probably neighborhood would be a better definition because everything's so close. Like Rexmont is an actual town, but everything else is more, they were just like neighborhoods, but they called them individual villages within the community of Cornwall. And yeah, so as always, it's an absolute pleasure to hang out with you guys and go on another journey and adventure. And thanks for coming along again, and we will see you all about town. Thanks, everybody.